Welcome to the Membership Guys podcast. Kick-ass advice and tips for membership site owners.
Hey everyone, I'm Mike Morrison and this is the Membership Guys podcast, the only podcast that delivers top-notch strategy, tips, advice, and a whole lot more for the world of membership sites each and every week directly into your ear holes. Thank you so much for downloading the latest episode. In today's show, I'm talking about quite a simple, quite a small question, but one that does come up quite often. And that is, which currency should I use when pricing up my membership site? And this is something which often comes up from people who are either based in the UK, like Callie and I are, who are based in Australia or Canada or somewhere else where it's an English-speaking country. So obviously their content, their marketing activity, their membership product is all going to be in English. They're catering to an English-speaking audience, but they're not sure whether they should be charging in their native currency or whether they should be charging in US dollars, because it seems that everybody charges US dollars, even when they're not based in the US. Now, I typically find that actually while people from countries like the UK or Australia are more accustomed to paying in US dollars for products, even if they're, created and published by people who are in the same country as them, I find they're more accustomed to paying for products in the US dollar currency rather than their own, while people in the US are perhaps far less accustomed to paying in Canadian dollars or Australian dollars or British pound sterling. So my advice tends to be that if a big portion of your audience are likely to be US based, and if your membership isn't a one that specifically caters or is specifically designed for your home market, so if there's nothing about what you're doing that makes it specifically aimed at UK audience, then often your best bet is to price for US dollars, because that's going to give you the furthest reach. It's going to reduce friction, because again, as we said, I think US people are so accustomed to being able to enroll on courses, buy software, buy stuff online in their own currency. They're not as accustomed to having to pay in a different country's currency than people from the UK, Australia, Canada, etc. are. Now, we do get people asking whether it's a valid option to actually present two different prices. So to have on their sales page a dollar price and a pound price. But your big problem there is going to be currency fluctuations. You're always going to be having to check on how the pricing stands to make sure that your US dollar price is around about the same value as your Canadian dollar price or your pound sterling price or your Australian dollar price, etc. You also have the value perception issue. So right now, for example, 50 US dollars works out at around about 67 Australian dollars. So if you put those prices side by side on a sales page, now even if you're distinguishing with maybe a little picture of the graph or, specifically putting into words, this price is US dollars, this price is Australian dollars, the psychological factor of having these two numbers next to each other, having your Australian customers needing to choose the higher figure, even though logically if they think it through, it makes sense because, $67 is the same as $50 American, and, they're not paying any more. There's still that subconscious psychological risk that they're going to have a negative connotation with this idea that they have to take the higher priced option, the higher of the two figures, even though they are the same value. So having those prices side by side, offering prices for the different territories you're most active in on your sales page, that's usually going to cause more problems than it's worth. It's often just far simpler to either stick to your home currency if that's where your market is, if that's what your product is specific to, or to just go for the US dollars. Now, we talked about currency fluctuations, and again, I think that's an area where people sometimes worry a little bit about pricing for the US market. In recent recent months, you've had the situation where actually the Canadian dollar and the US dollar have kind of fallen out of odds in terms of their exchange rate. And so suddenly, all these things that Canadians are having to pay for online in US dollars is actually, they're costing them more than they used to. So across a number of our clients' membership sites, and indeed with our own, we've actually had inquiries coming in from potential Canadian members asking if there's any way they can get some sort of discount or some sort of recompense for the fact that the exchange rate is so unfavorable to them right now. And with those, often the temptation will be to give some money off or to allow someone in Canada, for example. It doesn't have to be Canada, just so happens that's a recent example. It may be tempting to let them join on a discount because it kind of sucks, you know, if what you were paying for before was kind of the equivalent of $50 and then now it's doubled, then that does suck. But you kind of have to stick to whichever pricing approach that you've used, because for all you know, let's say you did decide to create a coupon that you offered to your Canadian audience, for example, that allowed them to join your membership site for half price. Now, what happens if in 6 months' time the exchange rates flip in the other direction and then all of a sudden your Canadian members are enjoying your membership for about a quarter of what they should have paid for it? So you can't really budge on this. You can't feel accountable or feel like you're responsible for accounting for fluctuations in exchange rates. So anyway, hopefully that's kind of helped you. Hopefully that's answered that question of what currency should you use for pricing your membership, and hopefully it's given you a bit to think about when it comes to things like exchange rates, when it comes to how you should present your pricing. Keep it simple. If you have a broad audience and it's English speaking, then the easiest, simplest option is just to go for that US dollars. People in your country and other English speaking countries won't mind paying the US dollars as much because they'll be accustomed to it, and you avoid the situation of trying to get the US market to pay for stuff in pound sterling or Canadian dollars or Australian dollars. And of course, that's another area of confusion because Australia, Canada, and America all call their currency dollars. And they all use the same dollar symbol. So if you decide you're going to price in Australian dollars, then it's entirely possible someone from the US may just see the dollar sign, they may just assume it's US dollars, then they realize they paid more or what have you, then that's going to cause complaints. So best to just keep it simple, unless your product or unless your market is specific to your local country or to any other specific country, then just go for the safer, easier option of pricing in US dollars. Hopefully you guys have found this useful. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Membership Guys podcast. If you've enjoyed today's episode of the Membership Guys podcast, we invite you to check out the membersiteacademy.com. The Membersite Academy is the essential resource for anyone at any stage of starting, growing, and running a membership website. So whether you're still figuring out what your idea is going to be, or whether your website is already up and running and you're just looking for ways to grow it and attract new members, then the Membersite Academy can help you to get to the next level. With our extensive course library, monthly training, exclusive member-only discounts, perks and tools, and a supportive community to help you along the way with feedback, encouragement and advice, the Membersite Academy is the perfect place to be for anyone looking to start, manage and grow a successful membership website. So check it out at membersiteacademy.com.